Hello, and welcome back to the Let's Study series of Programming Principles in Practice using C++, 3rd edition. After reading Chapter 0, Notes to the Reader, I have some reflections on some of the readings that I had made, and would like to speak briefly on them before continuing on to Chapter 1. Here I wrote some of the quotes from the book and some reflections on those quotes. On page 6, paragraph 5, we had a warning paragraph section, and there's a sentence there saying, "It is essential that you don't get stuck in an attempt to learn everything about some language detail or technique." In response to this, I thought that my learning process has been, up to this point, to travel towards a goal, and whenever something unknown was encountered, I would stop and then learn everything about that unknown, and anything that I would encounter learning about that unknown, I would also learn about that. So, for example, say I have the goal of making a game. I would travel along, and now I know, I don't know about animation. So, let's learn about animation. And then we learn quickly that animation is involving transformations. And then, I don't know what transformations are. Let's learn about transformations. And then now I'm learning linear algebra instead of making a game. Now, why do I do this, or have been doing this, is because I didn't want to get myself into a situation where I'm, say, close to my goal, and then I'm surrounded by the unknown. So everything is unknown. Say I skipped learning about this and followed a tutorial, or just quickly figured out a way of doing something to where I didn't quite have to learn it, but I applied it anyways. Say I'm here right at the end of my goal, but something breaks. Something doesn't go quite as planned. And in that case, I end up in a situation where I don't feel like I know anything, and I've wasted my time. And so that's why whenever I hit something unknown, I learn everything about it, and if I hit something unknown again, I also learn anything about it as well. Well, obviously, this takes an incredible amount of time, and the scope of what I need to learn to get to my goal expands rapidly. Sort of follows along another quote on the same page, that skipping details will get you burned occasionally for lack of knowledge. So this is where I might be at my game, at my end goal, and something doesn't work because I don't know how to apply something. I lack some vital piece of knowledge. But it is the fastest way to gain the perspective needed to write good programs. In this case, if I had quickly learned something about animation and quickly applied what I learned to reaching my goal of making a game, I would have learned perhaps what types of animations, or if animations were even useful to my goal. And I would have some perspective. I would still be here at the end of my goal, or close to the end of my goal. I'm not there yet, but I would have the perspective on what's important. So say something's going awry, and I know it has something to do with transformations, or something to do with bones or topology. And so now, from this perspective of something broken, I can learn and focus on what I need to know. Perhaps. Secondly, I had this thought immediately after reading this section on page 7. C++ rests on two pillars: efficient direct access to machine resources, making C++ effective for low-level machine near programming, as is essential in many application domains. And the second pillar, powerful, with zero overhead abstraction mechanisms, making it possible to escape the error-prone low-level programming by providing elegant, flexible, and type and resource-safe yet efficient facilities needed for higher-level programming. These core features of C++ so closely mirrored my philosophy for what is like an ideal programming language that it warrants checking my own belief system in this, instead of, well, apparently I'm parroting almost exactly what C++ sort of stands for as a programming language, or provides as a programming language. Because my beliefs align so closely with what I've read so far about C++, it seems like I've just adopted that and only that as the best thing that there is. And I think that's some negative. I'll probably end up leading me down a pitfall where I'm thinking C++ is the only solution or the best solution, or be the only language I will work with or something. And so I want to catch that early. And this is sort of a warning sign that, my beliefs perfectly mirror what is written about C++. Thirdly, I found the quote that the aim is always to write code at the highest level affordable on page 7. I was confused by it for a little bit for what it meant. But what I thought it meant was that we want to write our code with the highest level features and the highest level of sort of the features that our language provides, such that we gain experience with using them, as well as, just gain experience with using these higher level features of the language. This is in contrary to what I've been coding with my coding style or habits, is to use the lowest level that I can get away with. In this, I have an attempt to make like the simplest and the least dependent on resources. So I'm thinking that this style of writing, where say I can get away with not using a library, or I'll import a library but only take a single function from it, or I will use C instead of C++ if I can get away with not using object-oriented programming. And so I think that this philosophy, or this style and habit I have of writing code in the lowest form possible has been robbing me of valuable experience of these higher level features of the programming languages that I've worked with. And so, well, I need to change that. I need to try to use these higher level features whenever I can and whenever it would make sense to do so. And that would provide a more robust experience with these features. And I think finally, this quote resonated very deeply with me, that programming has an unfair reputation as a lonely activity. So I have grown to have a deeply negative attitude towards programming, to be sort of this unnatural, intangible thing that we do, and also to be quite alienating. And so when I'm programming, I'm at my computer, I'm at my house, I'm away from friends, away from family, and when I am with friends and I am with family, if they don't have the requisite knowledge, or simply they don't want to talk about it for sure, I can't talk about my time spent programming. And so it's both alienating physically when I am locked in my computer away from people, as well as alienating when I can't talk about the things that I've been doing because, well, people don't want to talk about it, or they lack the knowledge to be able to converse. And so, yep. So this is finishing up the reflections that I had on Chapter 0, Notes to the Reader, for Programming Principles and Practice Using C++, 3rd edition. Next video, we'll be cracking in to some of the problems that we have encountered with this section, where I've sort of given myself some tasks to do before we get into part 1, the basics, is I want to get this PPP support module from the website, the Bjorn Stroustrup website. And also I want to get, I don't quite need to do this because I have Visual Studio working with C++ 23, or in this case the latest, STD latest. And so I want to get it working with GCC. So just so I have another compiler to work with instead of just Visual Studio. And although I know that I'm going to stick with Visual Studio because I think it's very powerful, it's very useful, and I'm very used to it, I do want to make sure that I am enabling this range checking enforcement that was briefly mentioned in Chapter 0. And so once we get these 3 things done, we can get into the meat of part 1, the basics. Thank you for watching. Have a good night.